Howdy ho.
Yo, yo, yo.
What's up?
happening?
So we got Tess here. Hey, Tess.
Hey, I'm Tess.
We were just conversing about vomiting on psychedelics and peeling our calluses, or my calluses.
The real stuff.
Yeah. Real life talk. How you doing today, Tess?
So excellent. I can't even stand it.
You got
How about
Eddie
yourself?
over here.
Yo, yo.
We're doing good.
Back for another one.
I'll speak for myself. I'm doing good. I don't know how you're
Oh,
doing.
I'm great.
Sweet.
I'm good to go.
I couldn't be better, really.
Yeah. Hell yeah. All right. So, Tess, tell me a little bit about yourself. I know you pretty well at this point. Eddie.
I don't know you, but you know me, apparently.
Just from watching these episodes.
Oh,
So
look, we're getting a little bit of fame.
We have at least a viewer.
yeah,
No, we get some feedback and stuff.
that's
Cool.
good.
Yeah.
What should I share?
Who
about
are
myself?
you? Just like,
Just
well,
a general
before
intro,
we
I
get
guess.
into like stuff. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Tess. I'm a master's student at FAU. I study anthropology, specifically medical anthropology. So I'm interested in looking at health topics through a cultural analysis type lens. So the way that like our behavior and our beliefs shape the way that we experience disease or health or lack of health or defining health and all those types of things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right on. So.
And I'm doing my research with Rebel Recovery.
Right.
Yeah.
And how did that come about? Like, what made you make that like choice to decide to do your research? Well, what are you doing your research on specifically? Why Rebel? Like, what? How do we relate to what you're doing?
So, okay, so I'll describe how it relates to what I'm doing, and then I guess I'll say like why I chose to do it.
Sure.
So I guess that like health issues that are related to things like drug use are really like socially constructed. They're not uniform, like cross-culturally or across societies. People don't experience health problems as related to drugs the same way in different places. So a lot of it has to do with the way that a society views drugs, how they deal with drug problems, and how they respond to people and view people who are struggling with drug use. Right. So the way we construct our laws and the beliefs that are behind that, the way our interpersonal relationships are with people. The United States is like a shit show with that stuff. It doesn't have to be as hard as it is here. It doesn't have to be as bad as it is. There doesn't need to be so many sick and dying people as it relates to drugs. And there's evidence-based solutions that have been used in other places. And we just like won't do it. And that's a belief thing. So that's culture.
What kind of health problems are you talking about?
Like addiction or overdose events. We talk about drug use in like a pathological way. So going to overdose events or people referring to people who have passed away from some type of drug-related incident, a lot of times people will say like they died of this disease that they had.
Right.
Like this person lost their battle with a disease. And that's not necessarily always the case every time somebody has a substance-related death. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So to break it down and simplify it a little bit, maybe take like a little bit of like a reductionist approach, because this is an idea like that I also subscribe to. We've talked about it a bit like on the show, but it's not necessarily a substance or the substance in and of itself that causes so many problems, both health-wise and like socially, as much as it is the way society and drug policy plays a hand in that. And then all the things that follow
and then
it.
there's so many other factors going in. Like, Western society is not like a connectivity or a collective based society. We're individualistic, which can be positive in some ways, but in a lot of ways, it's not the way that we've evolved to share and live with each other. Individualism is really new, and people really struggle to cope with it. And the United States can be a very isolating place. People don't necessarily always have a community that they can connect to. Not even their families are really a unit in the same way that maybe they have been historically. And so people are really alone and disconnected, and that can result in a variety of issues. And if we have no good resources for connecting and coping, dealing with mental health problems, people are going to self-medicate. And then what we have available to self-medicate with is primarily unregulated, with the exception of alcohol.
Right. And then because of that, like, we have added issues like a overdose crisis that's now the leading cause of death in 18 to 38, 41 or something like that.
Why do you think that is, that we're such an individualized society and not, what was the term you used,
collectivist, connected, you could say, as a description of a collectivist society.
Is that kind of a nice way of saying that we live in a selfish kind of society?
I think the United States is a selfish society. That's my personal view, and I think others share that view. I'm trying to pick my words. I don't think that I don't think that individualism is necessarily like inherently selfish. And why? I don't know enough about history to be able to give a really nice in-depth explanation, but I know that like modern-esque Protestant Western values are very much based in the way that we view work, family, taking care of yourself first, and ways that we view ownership.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so like the whole like
property and
property.
there's like features of collectivist societies versus features or characteristics of like individualistic societies. Like, I mean, I'm sure that you could elaborate further, but like in a collectivist society or culture, you generally have more like generations of families living together. Like that's a general
Correct.
feature of those types of cultures and societies, which is like, and when people from those types of societies will come here, like we have kind of not necessarily stereotypes, but traits of like, you know, people who come from Latin American countries. It's often, even in the United States, like multi-generational within the same household versus, you know, you move out at 18.
A lot of places.
Yeah.
That's normal for a lot of places.
Yeah. Well, I'm just throwing out an example.
No, yeah, for sure. No, that's a very common example, especially like a lot of families in South Florida. But yeah, I think it also has to do a lot with like American capitalism and the way that we developed industry here. Like if there's more individuals leaving the household to go work and have their own household, then like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And like there's positives and negatives to, you know, like both sides in a lot of ways. Like we make the way our society is, we have a lot of technological advances and just general progress pretty quickly, and maybe like economically more secure or have like a more solid foundation. Not necessarily than all other collectivist societies, but just as a capitalist, very individualistic society,
it's just
the goal is
super unsustainable.
Agreed.
Like how reliable is it if like it cannot last for long? Like it's reliable for a certain period of time, which is comforting in the period of time. But as far as like looking forward, like how long can it last? Mm-hmm. How long can it maintain that way? And like economically and ecologically, like not very long. Like it's not sustainable for normal people now, especially like the way that it's being maintained by people who have benefited from it the most.
Yeah. Well, we stand on shaky legs. Like if every man's out for themselves and we can like make these big advancements quickly, but maybe like in a different society that's not so focused on technological or economical advances, their foundation may be more solid because there is more looking out for one another and maybe a little bit less shaky and more sustainable.
Yeah, if you can't cooperate with each other, it's like fucking a matter of time.
Right.
You have to be able to cooperate with each other.
Right.
When you lose your ability to do that, to speak to one another, to understand each other, to trust each other, to share with each other. We should share with each other. Things are not going to work well, especially like when you have so many people that you're saying like we're one society. Mm-hmm. And like it's very difficult for us to even get a county on the same page, let alone like this like nation of states.
Yeah.
With these like crazy amount of like levels of government where every individual and also state and also federation, like there's so many rights to be considered, and everybody thinks that like our personal individual rights are the priority, but they're technically not. There isn't really like prioritized rights other than like folks who have enough money to ensure that their rights are being prioritized. Yeah. This feels like a tangent now, but individualism. Yeah. So it's like, okay, so you go out and you make your own. So you migrate across the United States and you start your own community and you start your own business and oil and gold and all these different things and like taking over different places, and it is tied to Christianity. It's our right. Mm-hmm. God has said that this is our right to take this land and have it for our own.
What was the
Manifest Destiny?
There it was. Yeah, Manifest Destiny.
And so that's some of like the roots of like modern American individualism. Mm-hmm. So it's very much tied to like Protestantism and like ownership, which is why in a variety of ways, like when people are not doing well or we think that their life is a mess, not only is it only their fault, but it's like a moral, spiritual problem that they have. And then we intervene in that way because we believe that.
Right.
Well, you have to get your shit together.
Right. I mean, and
but that's not like the reality.
No, and we see how that has not been effective, and we have hundreds of thousands of people dying a year, or over 100,000 people dying a year, because of that approach, and we still try to take that approach as a whole.
Yeah.
But I mean, like we've seen the volatility of like the way our society can be. You look at like COVID and the way stuff went down with that, and like a lot of other societies that can be viewed as more collectivist, like handled it very differently and their outcomes were different. You look at, I was just listening to a podcast the other day that they were talking about like the blackout, the New York City blackout, and like, I don't know, 90s or 80s. It was like 24 hours, a little, maybe give or take, a little more, a little less. Dude, everything devolved like so fast, like
purge type.
Absolutely.
People lost their fucking minds.
I mean, robbing, jacking, stealing, stabbing, firing, creating fires. It was
firing.
Everything, because lights went out, power went out, and everything just went to shit.
That like just shows like how fragile our like hi audience. I have Tourette syndrome, so if I make a strange noise, that's what that is.
And when I snap or do things, which I have a big habit of doing,
it
does it.
But that just goes to show how like fragile our like social fabric is.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and how our first thought is to take something for ourselves. We're not going to check on our neighbor.
Opportunists.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we saw that with the riots and stuff we had not long ago during the elections and all that kind of stuff.
Dude.
They were quick to start looting. Some people were just out there to loot. They weren't even there for the cause.
Absolutely.
They were just there because they wanted free stuff. You know?
Listen, and I don't even necessarily like think that like, oh, that was morally inept. It's like we set shit up of like, of course someone would do that. And of course they're going to take advantage of the chaos to get the things that like we don't ensure that they have, that like we feasibly could, you know?
Yeah.
Like we make people do this shit.
Yeah.
You know?
People have different motivations for doing that, but that's the symptom of the way that like our society is. And that can be applied, which is basically what you're doing in your research, to drug use and the way that we've approached the issue and what could maybe work better.
Right. So that's how that issue is related to culture. It's the way that we view things and our shared beliefs about people and the issue that like creates tangible health impacts. More specifically, what I'm looking at is like, okay, so harm reduction resources have a lot of evidence. They're really balanced. They're non-judgmental. And they're based and originated in like collective organizing, which is kind of the antithesis to like drug war attitudes.
Right. And just to clarify, when you say, so I know like medical anthropology and health, but when you're saying health, we're not like, you're not just referring to physical health, right? Like it's the whole thing of the well-being of a whole person.
The well-being, yeah.
Their social well-being and like whether they're sitting in jail for, you know, tiny drug charges or losing connection to their family. Everything, not just
your entire well-being
impact.
Is your entire well-being.
Right.
If you're mentally unwell, it's going to physically affect you.
Absolutely.
If you're physically unwell, it's going to mentally affect you.
Yeah. I just wanted to like make sure to clear like that it's not.
I mean
we're not
health
just
in a
looking at
holistic
physical,
manner.
Yes. Okay.
In a holistic manner.
Yep.
Yeah. Right, and that includes like your living standards, your quality of life. All those things. So it's really broad. You could do a lot with that. But I'm really interested in, okay, let me back up. Harm reduction, it's evidence-based, it's collectivist. There's so many reasons why it should not be hard for us to implement these types of resources. People get so upset about it. And like, it's very difficult for resources like y'all to get support to survive. You have support, like there are entities that will support you till their last breath, but there's so many other like people or groups that are like, you would give somebody needles? Like you're an enabler. You're killing people.
Including people with a history of substance use.
Or
especially people with a history of substance use in some cases.
Well, sure, and that makes sense to me to a certain degree. And so I wanted to know, what are the barriers for those types of resources here in Palm Beach County? Because Palm Beach County has like a large recovery population. We have a lot of special problems. The economic divide is pretty immaculate here.
Which a lot of people aren't aware of.
Which astounds me.
Yeah.
But that's this idea in like social science of like invisible communities or invisible populations. It's like people aren't aware of it because like we hide them away, like on the streets and in jail. Like those people exist and they're still a part of the community in a census type way.
Yep.
If you If you wanted to just say it very basically like that.
So why drug use? Why harm reduction? Like, what for you? Like, what sparked the idea, or like, why is that meaningful to you? I mean, you could do so much, like you said. Like, the topic as a whole of medical anthropology is very broad. Like, what brought you to that?
And even beyond that, I'm going to go back a little bit. Even beyond that, anthropology is really broad. In the United States, it's a 4-field discipline. So you could be an archaeologist, you could be a biological anthropologist, which is what I was originally doing. So I studied skeletal remains and doing skeletal analysis.
Tess loves bones.
I do.
She knows a lot
they
about
can
bones.
tell you so much. It
Be
really
careful how
is
you
incredible.
say that. Or who you say that to.
We found like a bone, like pretty certain it was a bone. That was a bone, right?
It was,
a
yeah.
bone.
It's not human.
Yeah, I say it's human, but she's the expert. It's more fun to think it's human.
Yeah.
But at our at the Lake Worth exchange site,
It looked like a sawed femur.
Yeah.
Well, that's creepy.
It was like a piece
sawed. You
that
found
was clearly
in
a
the
bone.
bushes.
a murder victim.
Yeah, dude, like right by the exchange bus, like in the bushes, and we were like it had been there for a while. Like we'd see it every now and then.
An astoundingly long time, yeah.
Yeah, and then we had Tess there, and she's like telling us all about like why it's probably what it is, or like whatever she could see on it. Yeah, she knows her bones. Yeah.
I try.
Yeah.
Well, not anymore, but
Yeah.
it's still
So
interesting
why?
to
What
me.
moved you away? Yeah.
And you could also do linguistics, and then there's cultural anthropology, which is like what I'm doing. Medical anthropology is like a subfield of cultural anthropology. So there's like, so you've got the umbrella discipline of anthropology, and then like 4 major fields, and then lots of subfields in the field. So there's like, and the anthropology program at FAU is like a 4-field program. We don't have a linguistics person anymore, but we used to. But we have a really like wonderful, thriving archaeology sort of track. We have 2 incredible biological anthropologists. So there's Kate Detweiler. She's a primatologist. So she studies non-human primates to connect it to our evolutionary history. And then we have Meredith Ellis, and she studies bioarchaeology. So that's looking at human skeletons in an archaeological context to understand culture through the body, because bone is both organic and inorganic. It builds and destroys itself. So the things that you do, your activity, it leaves its mark.
Right.
And so you can look at somebody's bones and be like, they did this type of labor frequently. This is the type of nutrition that they had, different things like that.
So you can see a lot in bones.
You could see a lot in bones.
Pretty cool. That's
Cool.
Really interesting. Yeah.
It is. And then cultural anthropology is doing stuff like ethnographic research, which is what I'm doing with you all. So that's when you go and you hang out with people for a long period of time, and you absorb yourself in their world, and you talk to them, and you watch them, and you interview them.
And you've done a very good job at doing so.
I've done all those things. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so much to choose from, and I originally wasn't doing cultural anthropology. I have always been really interested in social theory. I like abstract social theory. I find it really interesting. And there's been a recent move in bioarchaeology to apply social theory to bones. So I was doing like queer feminist perspectives, looking at the archaeological record, because it's very biased. It's not very good science. It's not an accurate view of culture and gender across culture and space and time. And so I was really interested in doing that sort of thing. So COVID was happening during my first year of grad school. All of the museums were shut down. It's still very difficult to access human remains collections. Mm-hmm. Even which is dumb because you're sitting in a lab by yourself. Like,
yeah,
everyone else that's there is no longer alive. So right. Who is getting sick? But still, they were trying to be really careful, and I understand that. So trying to figure out what my thesis was going to be, like, my first year was, like, really difficult. It was very hard to figure out how I was going to find a collection and, like, what type of perspective that I wanted to take. And also there's, like, a huge, just, like, heinous history of how we acquired these remains that are in universities and museums.
Oh, tell me more. I want to know. You used the word heinous.
I will fucking tell you, bro.
Well, fucking tell me.
Grave robbing.
No shit.
Yeah.
Grave robbing.
Without permission?
It's robbing. Yeah.
Have you heard about, have you heard of the bodies exhibit?
Yes.
I've been to the
that
bodies exhibit.
I've always wanted to
it's
go.
Very
to
interesting. It's cool until you find out where those are coming from.
Oh,
and that's also where a lot of teaching skeletons come from. So listen, teaching skeleton is not an archaeological object. That is a full body that is defleshed and cleaned for teaching purposes, for learning how to work with skeletons, looking at bone anatomy.
Right.
Where the bodies from the body exhibit came from, and where bodies most likely come if you have a teaching collection, it's people in impoverished areas of the world paying back their debt by literally having to sell their family's corpses.
At best.
That's insane.
At best.
At
or
best. The bodies
imprisoned folks.
Yes. The bodies exhibit is China. That's coming out of China. And we really don't, like, nobody, like, actually knows, like, where all of them are sourced. But considering, like, what has come out a lot in recent years about, you know, certain, like, internment camps and the, what's the name of that Muslim population in China?
I forget, but
I'll
they
find
experience
out.
a lot of serious scrutiny.
Yeah.
So China's sending bodies over here for an exhibit, is what you're trying to say.
Dude, we be buying the shit out of that. We're like, please, can I please have some?
First I've heard of it.
It doesn't really get talked a lot. The United States does not like to talk about death, even in reference to our own funeral practices. It's very unclean. It's morbid. We don't like to talk about it. We like to make sure people are in a hospital when they're dying. Like, it's very out of sight, out of mind for us. It makes us uncomfortable. We don't really value people after death either, unless we know them. And if they're really abstract to us, like, it's a defleshed corpse that we don't know which country it's from, and we don't have really any inkling of who the human being is, well, it's just a scientific object, right? It's not a person. It's a fucking person, bro. Right. It's a fucking person. So,
and these
grave
aren't necessarily like cadavers that have, like, willfully donated themselves.
It's almost certainly not.
Yeah.
It's almost certainly not.
Yeah. Uyghur Muslims, by the way, are the ones that have been facing a lot of persecution in China.
So there's that particular trade. The grave robbing that was happening in, like, 19th, 20th century. And then also, particularly with a lot of collections that are in, like, the Smithsonian, there's a lot of, like, 19th century immigrant community collections there in the Smithsonian. And so it's a lot of African American folks, Irish folks, German folks, and Italian folks who were taken essentially from poorhouses, hospitals, or paying back a debt. They go to a medical institution for scientific use by default if their family could not like pay within 2 days to have them buried. Usually, of course, those communities, they can't fucking pay that shit. So they can't afford it.
So there's a lot of problematic issues with that kind of thing.
And then the way that they're stored. Physical anthropology was interested in, first of all, when it originally started, it was problematic off the bat because it was about constructing racial categories and hierarchies of people. So creating, literally pulling it out from their asses, like scientific justification for colonialism.
Yeah.
So here's a scientific explanation of why that's not really a person.
Right.
It's fucked up.
Yeah.
And so there's that. And then it moved into, well, we're looking at population health in a broad manner. But there's so much human variation in diversity. So much. But if people couldn't take certain bodies and generalize them in data, any sort of body that was like an anomaly, like it skewed the data for making a generalized sort of characterization of the health of a population, thrown in the garbage. Bodies get thrown in the garbage. Bodies get broken. They get dropped all over the place. They get shoved into cigar boxes. They get shoved into shoe boxes. They don't have any labels. You don't know who it is. You don't know where they came from. You don't know who their fucking family is. This is not a person with a name.
Right.
Really bad. And it's still like that. It's still organized or not organized in that way. And so when I was preparing to figure out which collection I could access and learning about, here's some issues you may run into, it was making me sick. It was really bothering me. I was getting really uncomfortable with doing that work, even though, and first of all, I just want to say, like, I love bioarchaeologists. A lot of them are not like that and don't feel that way. This is like a problem that has not been cleaned up. It's like a bureaucratic problem. And a lot of scholars don't see a problem with it too. So it's kind of difficult to undo. But there's a lot of really amazing scholars doing really great work with skeletal remains. And it gives us great information about human diversity. And cultural diversity as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of like medical like atrocities and like, I mean, like most of the science and knowledge that we have today, like you can kind of trace back to a lot of problematic practices and things that have been done. So it seems as if like you kind of saw some problems in there. Also with COVID, it was keeping you from being able to like maybe get as far with it or making more barriers for it. So
what had happened was
what had happened was
but I like and I knew I wanted to switch to cultural. I knew it. I was like, I know that that's the sort of thing I would be interested in, that it would probably be easier for me to talk about the things that I want to talk about. But I like couldn't like make the decision. It felt too big. I felt like I had gone too far into what I was doing. I had really formed a lot of my identity around being like the bone person.
Sure.
And being really, really talkative about it. And, you know, I don't know. Like it was a part of my like academic personality essentially. And I loved my advisor. I love Meredith Ellis. I still love her. And she's still helpful to me. She's on my committee for this project. I really didn't want to switch my advisor. She was a woman that I really trusted. I liked having a mentorship with a woman that I trusted. That's something that, for a variety of reasons, that like I've lacked at certain periods of my life, and it felt very emotional to think about like her not being my advisor anymore. So I just was like not going to do anything about it. And then it was Easter weekend. It was Good Friday. I did some acid and had like my little hero's journey on that trip. And when I came out of it, I was like ready to make several important decisions that I really needed to make.
I don't want to skip over that though. Like we just talked about like 10 minutes of like bioarchaeology problematic stuff, and you're just gonna be like, and then I dropped acid and like decided to like no,
I didn't know if like I would describe it
the shit
now
that we
or
want to talk about.
What's the hero's journey?
Just tell. I mean, we've had conversations about this, but like, what did that entail? I mean, like, obviously, like people do psychedelics and have like an awakening, but like let's talk about like at least like some of what that looked like to whatever extent you're comfortable with, but like that's the nitty-gritty.
I just like will go on for a while. Like,
it's okay. I can try to steer when need be. Try.
Okay, I feel like I have to provide just some context about myself for it to make sense, I guess. So like I have been suicidal since I was like 9 years old.
You've had instances of suicidality. You haven't just been like, I want to kill myself every minute of every day since
almost
9 years old,
every single day.
Okay.
If I'm not seriously considering it, it is coming up in my mind every day, you know, kind of difficult to cope with. I also grew up very fat. And then I was definitely very, very fat in college when I had done acid a couple times before this particular acid trip. And I was at my highest weight when I did. And during those trips, I was like actually able to see what I look like. You know how your ego sort of like changes your perception a little bit about like what you look like and what your personality is like and all those different things.
And how people see you.
Yeah. And I was getting stoned a lot at the time as well and having a very problematic relationship with marijuana. So I was not aware of anything about myself really at the time. And so the first like 2 times I did acid, I was like, the walls came down enough for me to be like, like, I'm not as comfortable with my weight as I thought that I was. I didn't realize that my weight had gotten to this point. I have a lot of unresolved issues with my mental health and my weight. This is becoming a problem. And then COVID hit and like we went into quarantine. And then I had the most debilitating like mental health year of my life. Like really couldn't do anything.
It was like that for a lot of different people.
Yeah.
Man, it was so bad.
Yeah. Suicide rates went.
Yeah, man.
No, they did.
And overdose rates. Yeah.
No, it was so serious, and that was frightening for me as well. During that period of time, I felt like I literally like I couldn't even remember like what my personality was like. Like you lose your personality. And I hadn't felt that way in a really long time. Like I hadn't felt that way like since my attempt in high school. So it was really like very sad for me, very difficult. Vince has never seen me. Vince is my partner, has never seen me like so ill before. And it was really hard for him to adjust, but he was very supportive. He was a good partner. But I used the privacy of that time and like my lack of ability to think, because thinking is my thing. You know, that's what I like to do. I couldn't really think or talk the same way. So it's like, I'm going to focus on my body. I have the privacy to lose weight. Nobody's going to ask me any fucking questions. I don't fucking have to talk to anybody about it. Nobody's going to give me advice that I don't want. I'm just going to go for long walks every day. And so I lost a lot of weight. I started grad school all in COVID. And I really enjoyed and had reverence for my experiences with acid, and like the sort of cleanse you feel coming out of it, the heightened awareness and introspection that you have after it. And I'm like introspective in general. So after those experiences, it's like a hyper awareness of myself that allows me to like reorganize and go on.
Right.
Gotta love psychedelics, man. The way they just
beautiful
bring stuff out of you, man.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
It's
like
really
it's
fascinating.
like it finds that one thing in your brain that you're like suppressing,
Yeah.
and brings it to the surface.
Yeah.
For some people, that's a bad trip.
Yeah.
You know, I've been there.
That's what people are afraid of with it. Yeah.
Yeah, like I ate mushrooms while my
Just
dog was
have
dying
to
or
ride
starting to die.
Oh, wow.
And all I could think about was
Oof.
my dog. You know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah.
all I was focused on. And I just laid in a bed, and I was in a hotel room, just thinking about my dog. And it like all I kept thinking is, I need this to end so I can get home. I need this to end so I can get home. It was terrible.
It's hard.
You know, and you know, if there's something that, like I said, you're suppressing, whether it's something that happened to you as a kid or something more recent maybe, or, you know, something that you're just kind of, whatever, ignoring this little problem, brings it to the surface. And if you have a strong enough mind, it makes you kind of process it. Some people fold under that, call it a bad trip. But
Yeah.
like in your case, it seems like you were able to kind of process that and then use
Yeah.
it and do something different with it.
So those trips that I'd had before COVID hit, like I was like tripping, but I like could still like speak and like walk around and like do things. And I had done it like around Christmas, and then I'd done it like at my birthday. And I really enjoyed the sort of, is everything going okay? Oh, okay. I enjoyed the whole like New Year acid trip, birthday acid, like markers by holidays that are like reflective, like
Yeah.
I'm living for another year, or another year has begun. What hath God wrought? You know, what's going to happen? What has happened? So I was really, really hell-bent of like, okay, I've been like not been doing any drugs for like a year. I've been working really hard on my body and trying to like recuperate myself from this huge like mental break that I had. I was going through a lot physically. I had a hiatal hernia that it took them a really long time to find, and it was really huge, and it was stuck behind my heart, and it was potentially fatal. And they finally found what it was, and then I got my surgery. And so like I'd been through a lot, and I was like, I want to trip on my birthday. Like I want to do some acid. And then my friend who provides said acid, he's not always super reliable. So the acid that I was supposed to have January 27th, I ended up having it on Easter weekend, and I kind of like the way that that turned out. So I took it on Good Friday.
Which is a Friday.
My ego died, you know, as Jesus did on said day.
Far out, dude.
No, very metaphorical for me. So
Yeah.
come with me on this Easter weekend adventure. So I was like, okay, like, and it was the first time that I'd ever tripped without smoking weed either. So like I didn't have that on top of it. I wasn't high all day leading up to it, which
Right.
was the case every other time I did acid or shrooms. Like I was already on drugs when I took the drugs. This is like, I wasn't even drinking that much, and I'd stopped smoking weed. I hadn't smoked any weed. I hadn't done any psychedelics, and I was drinking quite a bit at the time, but like alcohol is so different. It's not really the same. So I don't really see it.
No, I
that
mean,
way.
taking psychedelics like with a clean, do I have levels, by the way? With a
Yeah.
clean slate. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure. We haven't used our cough buttons in a while, so taking psychedelics with like a clean slate is like a different experience. I may have told the story, but some friends and I went like backpacking on like the AT at one point, and like we planned out like we were going to be tripping for sunrise, and like set our alarms, like knew when the sun was going to come up. Like we got to like a certain like camp spot where it was like going to be pretty sick, and then dropped acid, like went back to sleep, and then woke up tripping. That is very, very, very different than going from like a sober mind, like awake and around, to like you have no reference point. It's a totally different experience. And in the same way, even just like, and at the time, like I was smoking weed all the time and stuff like that. So I'm sure like in the same way, going from that to like not, and then like taking a psychedelic kind of from, and you've already kind of maybe like gone through some growth and changes and like been facing a lot of different stuff.
And I was also like 100 pounds less than I was previously, and I don't know if that affected the way that I metabolized it either. I don't know. You probably know more about that than
does acid work that way?
I don't think
not
so.
a lot. Acid, it's pretty like there's not a lot of like weight dose dependent weight variation. It's one of those that just kind of like it's gonna hit you the way it's gonna hit you.
Yeah,
they were
I just
gel
know
tabs,
for everything
right?
else, it like I cannot do anything the way that I could do it when I was like 300 pounds.
True, and I mean that who
like
knows all, yeah.
Well, maybe things like marijuana is known to kind of store in your fat cells, and then alcohol.
It's really
that,
just
that
like
gets
weed and
metabolized
alcohol.
a certain way.
Yeah.
So, but
I don't think it's the
is
same
like
with
it just
acid.
goes straight to the brain.
Yeah.
So
You know?
they were gel tabs, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, gel tabs are always like,
My first time I ever tripped was on purple gel tabs.
Yep.
Purple,
So that's
I ate 2 of them.
little
the
bit of
first time
glitter
I
in
ever
them.
tripped. Yeah,
Yeah.
little gold flakes.
Yep. So that it was that
Purple
exact
gel tabs.
gel tab.
Yeah.
That's when I fell in love with psychedelics.
I took 2, and I had taken 2 before, and this is how it always happens. I feel like as soon as it was like taking forever to kick in.
The best acid always does.
The anticipation was a killing me.
The clean acid takes forever. The
and as
dirty
soon
one,
as I
it's like
said,
that.
as soon as I said, like I should have taken 3, it like, like.
Good thing you didn't.
Oh my God, I'm so glad. And that's why it's important to have experienced, informed people in your circle.
Yes.
That I had at least 2 or 3 people tell me many times before. It's like, choose your dose and stick with it. Like, don't, like, just do what you're going to do and, like, do that. Like,
and then go from there. Let it kick in.
Yeah.
And then wait longer.
And then go for that.
Yeah.
I'm like that with mushrooms.
Yeah.
I prefer natural over acid any day. And I like the visuals off of mushrooms a lot better. But I'll do that. I'll start with a dose. And dude, when I eat mushrooms, I make it last 12 hours. You know, I'm just eating mushrooms throughout the day. Start with an eighth. A few hours later, once I get to that plane where it's almost normal, eat a little bit more. You know, I like to make my trips last all day, but I starting with 2/8 or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not a maniac.
Yeah,
but
that's a different thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been there too.
I had to learn that lesson the hard way multiple times.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't a quick learner in my younger years, and specifically with psychedelics, like just was like, well, this is good. More would be better before it was like really good yet. And I did that.
At least get through the peak
many times.
first.
Yeah.
And then you could do your next dose, you know.
The man I live with and our friend, like, they've done like just about everything. Vince hasn't done like super hard stuff, but like everything else.
By hard
he's
stuff,
done
you mean like more stigmatized drugs, like
more
heroin,
stigmatized drugs, yeah. Like heroin and crack. And surprisingly, he's never done cocaine. Like even that, he's been like,
Yeah.
but like a variety of other stuff. And that was like their hobby. Like that's what they like to do. Like let's go take this and walk around and listen to music and whatever. So they're very informed. So good people to have around you, good people to be giving you drugs, you know, because they're not going to give you shitty drugs and things like that. But
friends like these.
Friends like these. So I was in a comfortable space. I like to trip in my apartment because I know that I have like severe anxiety. Like I know, like, I don't want too many factors coming in that I can't control. I want to be able to manage my experience like the best possible way that I can. And that means like staying at home, unfortunately. As lovely as the outdoors look, it's like I'll watch it from my fucking patio. Like, if somebody is speaking to me that I don't know, I don't want to be interpreting that. I don't want to go through those interpretive processes. So I just keep it to myself, you know. So I'm in my house, and then like my TV is melting, and like I don't particularly like if I'm home, I really like to be naked, or at least like not in a lot of clothes. And anytime I've done any psychedelic, like I really have the urge, like I need to like take my clothes off, or at least most of them off. And I had forgot about that sensation. So immediately I was like, oh my God, like I have to like, and I was tripping with a friend, and I'd have, every time I did acid, I did it with this friend. She was much more relaxed. Like it was very chill for her. But I was like, I sensed that like something was about to happen.
I'd never asked you this before, but were you on any like medications or different medications then? Okay. All right.
Nothing.
Yeah.
A whole lot of nothing.
It's crazy how they
like,
just choose when they're gonna.
I realized after, like, I did this to myself. Like, I set very strong intentions before this trip because I was in this huge like period of like growth. I was like, I want this to be a seriously like spiritual experience for me. Somebody did, my friend, she did like a little tarot reading for me. I like blessed my house. I like went the full
Some real hippy dippy shit.
Yeah. When in fucking Rome, you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
Throw on the meditation music.
Yes. Well, I don't know. I was actually
that was the vibe.
I was listening to Soundgarden that day. Actually, that was like the vibe, which became like really aggressive
I would think
as
so.
it was like progressing for me. Anyways, like I was having a very intense like Rusty Cage moment. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Anyways, so I need to be naked. I can't talk to my friend. Like, I can't talk to anybody. I'm realizing, like, I need to go be in my room so I can, like take my clothes off. Like, this is really, like, going in a very intense direction really fast. And I was, like, on my bed, like, trying to get comfortable. And, like, it was a type of thing of, like, I'm seeing so much at once, and then when I close my eyes, I'm also still seeing it. Like, there's no way to avoid seeing. Like, I'm just going to be seeing. Kind of uncomfortable for me. And I was literally going, like, oh, no. Like, oh, no. And I literally felt like I was, like, falling down a hole. Yeah. Like, I was feeling myself sort
like
of,
physically,
like disappear. And then I was just sort in my last moments of like really being able to talk to anybody. I was like naked on my knees on the floor like this, like going like, I can't believe that said friend who gave me this asset, I can't believe that he will take 15 at a time. Like, what's wrong with him? Like, I'm on 2 and I feel like I'm about to die. And just feeling like, wow, I just got out of the worst phase of my anxiety ever, and now I'm like freaking out. Like, this is very uncomfortable for me. Like, I should have more closely assessed if I was ready to do drugs again. And I felt very stupid. I'm not, but do you guys know that billboard that it's like a heavenly image? And it says, imagine being sober in like big cursive letters.
Yes, there's a few on that, 75, I think. Yeah.
And that billboard has always, I've like pointed it out and like laughed at it every time I saw it because it looks so silly to me. And then especially when I was like smoking every day, it was extra silly to me because I was like, I was really coping in a very negative way with my depression, I was like, I don't want to imagine being sober. I've been sober.
Right.
Fuck that. Nothing has helped my depression so much, which is stupid. Like, that wasn't actually helping. I was just like not paying attention to anything anymore.
Probably it was managing some amount of symptoms.
And then it made it so much worse.
Right.
Very,
which it can
like,
do.
Like at the point where it was like beyond my control. It felt like to reel it back in.
Weed has a weird tendency to turn on people. Like sometimes, like people like that smoke weed like all their life. Well, obviously not all their lives, but like from somewhat young to like, and then 20s, 30s, like some point, like they like it sends them into like an anxiety attack or a panic attack.
Oh, that's me.
And then every time after,
Yeah.
like it just
all of a sudden.
That's me, but I have to smoke a certain amount.
Right.
If I go too far,
yeah.
and it's not like crippling anxiety, but I start to worry about shit.
Right.
And I'm like, why am I worrying about this all of a sudden?
Right.
You know, it's like little things, but I'll sit and I'll start dwelling on these things, which will kind of make me feel uncomfortable, and you know, like that chest feeling, you know.
Yeah.
And then I tell myself, you know what, it's the weed. It'll wear off in a second.
Right.
You know, it doesn't last too long, but. Yeah, if I smoke a little too much, I'll get that anxiety feeling. As a kid, I'd smoke whatever kind of weed, as much as I wanted, and I would never get that feeling.
Yeah.
But now as an adult, I can't smoke sativa. It'll send me into a
Really?
it'll send me that'll give me like crazy anxiety.
I couldn't smoke sativa when I was dependent on opiates and benzos.
Oh.
I had to. I couldn't at all. Only indica.
It's too amping up, and I don't like that, and it gives me like crazy anxiety, like very uncomfortable, sit, stand, I want to walk over here, no, I don't want to be over here anymore. Indica is a little more sedative, which is what I like, but even with that, if I smoke too much, I'll go into this worrying about things, almost paranoid maybe, some people might call that paranoia. And I'll get very uncomfortable, but it doesn't last long, and I kind of just talk myself out of it, like you smoked a little too much, chill out, it'll be gone in a minute.
It just sort of made me like more enmeshed in like my depressiveness. And then when I stopped really being able to smoke, it was an anxiety thing. Like it became like a panic issue. And then I still tried to smoke after I realized like I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, common.
And honestly, so probably part of like what made that like mental health break I had in 2020 like so bad was like it was like quarantine hit, like current events, having a mystery health problem, being put back on Zoloft because I was panicking a lot, and then going through cannabis withdrawal like all at the same time. It was really, really brutal.
Yeah.
The sleeping was bad. So then I was like taking a lot of over the counter stuff to sleep, which was like not a good situation for like a couple of weeks.
Like Benadryl.
Yeah. Like taking 5 Benadryls to go to bed.
That could get you a little trippy.
It did. I was like,
people don't. It's crazy. I was talking with a friend just the other day. Like certain like antihistamines or like that dextromethorphan DXM, that's crazy. But like certain things that like at low doses just like, you know, have an antihistamine effect or like an anti-nausea effect, like scopolamine, like at a higher dose, like get real crazy. Diphenhydramine is a weird deliriant, like, but yeah. Anyways, it's all about the dose, right? Who said that? Like the poison is in the dose. It might have been like Socrates or some shit, but go on.
Imagine being sober. So this sign that I ridiculed quite often. The last thing I remember, so I kept coming up and down.
We're back on your acid trip now,
back
right?
on the acid trip. We're in the moment. And then I see a heavenly light shine upon me in this intense anxiety where I'm like, I regret doing these drugs. And it was like, imagine being sober, bitch. And I was like, fuck you. And then I like grew some giant like butterfly wings. And in that moment, I was like, I can make better choices in the future. Like, I can just do things that are better for me.
Far out.
And then I was like, gone.com, like, who is Tess Moody? Could not tell you who she is. Stomach, really not in a good spot, but I felt very detached from myself. So I was like, almost took a shit in the corner of my room, and I had to keep reminding myself, like, no, like, you're a type of animal that has like a room and like a bowl, like to go do that. And there's other people in the room that would not like it if you did that. But it was like very hard to like keep that as like a solid thing in my mind.
You were going primal, like you're
Yes,
getting
yes,
to like
yes.
lizard brain.
Acid.
And as an anthropology
some
student, I
stuff like
have
that at a fish
enough.
show.
I have like enough knowledge of that stuff, just like permanently in my brain, that like I did go like full evolution mode. So I was like in like a cosmos type of stage. So do you guys know this book called Star Maker by Olaf Stapledon?
I don't know how to read.
Okay, period. I could teach you. I could so teach you how to read, King.
I like to read, but no.
You can read.
I can read.
I feel attacked.
I can help. Anyways,
Before you go on, question: is this pre or post surgery?
post.
Okay, so you couldn't vomit either.
No,
Okay,
no.
because
And I
that's
was
the thing. Like
constipated
after the surgery,
all
you
of
can't
the
vomit.
time.
Yeah. Okay.
And I was probably like 2 or 3 weeks into being back on solid food after being on a like liquid soft diet for 3 months.
I would
And
think
I had
that
eaten
could
a
impact.
full meal.
Yeah.
And then took some acid, so my stomach was like, holy fuck. And I was
Yeah.
PMSing too. So like I felt my stomach up here. I felt my uterus moving and cramping as well.
Don't know what that's like, but damn.
And it was like, oh my God. And you know, you feel everything like
yes,
extra.
every cell in your body.
Yeah. Anyways, there's this book called Star Maker, and essentially it's like this, it's like written like a textbook. It's like this guy, and he's having an out-of-body experience, and he floats away from his human body up into space, and his consciousness is visiting like different planets, and then he will usurp like another, or absorb like another being from all of his travels, and they increasingly become like a collective consciousness traveling through the cosmos
Oh, you were
until they
telling
meet
me about this
the
book.
Star Maker. So
Okay.
the ultimate
Yeah.
cosmos creator, who's constantly creating and destroying, you know.
Which seems a little bit like an allegory to like Buddhism in a lot of ways, or just ideas of reincarnation. In some sense, they're like he's absorbing different experiences and souls, so
Sort
to
of.
speak. I mean, I haven't read the book, but just
Sounds
when you
like a Marvel
explain it
movie.
like
I would-
that,
It's cooler. So
Yeah.
like the narrative goes from like I to we and grows
Buddhism?
increasingly. So it starts with an individual, but it's not about a single person. And so at this like cosmos point, I'm like we. I'm like having like a we narrative of like we're stretching, we have hair, like we have skin. And then of course they're like we have bones, and like thinking about bones and the breaking down and the building up and how important that was. Like that's like those are the branches to this tree. Like this is what roots me in reality, and everything else can grow around and move around with. And
right?
She went full intellectual. on
and
this
then and then it was like,
Yeah, I
okay,
love it.
like I'm looking at like my hips and my legs, like I'm a bipedal animal. So like I'm an animal, and I'm like
On
an
2 legs,
upright
yep.
animal. So we were having like a Neanderthal moment, and like thinking about some pre-human auxiliary human species. And then finally it got to like, oh, like I'm a person, like I'm a human person. And then with my uterus and everything, like I'm like female, like, and then it became this very like intense like connection to like my sex, and then like my sex's experience with my gender, and then thinking about like women in general and like women across time, and being a part of like this legacy of like divine and earthly feminine energy, and getting to be a part of that, because that's something that like historically like I feel very detached from. Like you're not accepted as feminine in the same way when like you're a larger girl. I have a really strained I don't know, my relationship with my mother is very strained. I had trouble connecting with girls growing up, and it wasn't as encouraged really. My mom was not like big into girls. I don't think she liked being like a girl mom, and she didn't really want girlfriends over. She really enjoys me now that I'm another adult and she gets to talk to another adult. That doesn't bother her.
She doesn't have to be as much of a mother, maybe.
I don't want to describe it that way. People know.
I don't mean that like in a
people know what to do, and they
manner,
don't know what they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I think she did the best that she could from
Sure.
what she thought.
Yeah.
But her and I had a really strained situation. And then I'm bisexual as well. So I have a lot of complex sort of like Freudian type issues with my gender, and then like, so my experience with my own gender, and then relationally with my own gender.
Right.
So who I am, and then who I am in relationship to people that I share an identity with. And then I felt in that moment like really, really connected and really, really good. But then like, if my mom ends up watching this, I'm really sorry. But then I got to like, oh, I'm Tess Moody. And then like being Tess Moody, it was like, wow, like the first woman I ever met, like she hates me. And like, yeah. And then that was really hard. And then I like realized like how much resentment I had, and like how angry I was. Like I didn't realize like how angry I still was.
Yeah.
And like I had spent like the previous years like developing like a pretty intense like ego around myself to cope with things that like I had tried to change that I could not change, like particularly around my weight and my sexuality and the way that I view myself. And I became very overtly and like radically confident and outspoken in a lot of different ways. And in that moment, I was like remembering like, oh, like that's not happening like inside. Like I remembered like how much I hated myself growing up, and how much I haven't been thinking about like the problems that I still have. I've just been not coping. And I had become like increasingly cynical over those couple of years in general, feeling like the world is really against me, that I don't have respect for a lot of other people. I find them to be cruel and barbaric. I dislike them. I struggle to communicate with them. I feel misunderstood by them. I have trouble understanding them, even though that's what I try to do all fucking day. Very frustrating for me. And also I love ambiance. So I had a lot of like red lighting in my room. My room was like red, and I was raised Baptist. So all of a sudden I was like,
Hellfire.
am I in hell?
Yeah.
I'm in hell. Like I'm being punished right now, and like I am in hell. And you know how they say like, oh, like a psychedelic experience can mimic what we think might happen at the end of life.
Yeah.
And so I was like very struggling to gauge whether I was dying or not, and if I had already died and hell was remaining in what I perceive as reality, but it's just sort of like this prolonged, like torturous experience, and trying to situate myself, and like having a very serious debate about like, am I in like celestial punishment? I think what I immediately think that is just like a behavioral mechanism for me. I'm going to kill myself. Like I'm going to go kill myself. And in that heightened state of introspection, I was like, you're going to fucking what? like the seriousness. Like I'd never
connected like what the real implications of that would be.
Cared.
Yeah.
Or cared.
Yeah.
Because I was like outside of myself a little more. I was more so just like observing how I had felt in the past and observing that I still feel that way when I'm in reality, and like realizing that I was in a very dark place. It was frustrating for me because like, it's like, I am in graduate school. First of all, not only did I live past high school, but I'm in graduate school. I have a partner. I have an apartment. I study something that's interesting that I should be really enjoying and that I chose. I have friends. I just lost 100 fucking pounds.
Congrats.
Thank you. It's 130 now.
Good for you.
Period. Anyways, and I want to fucking kill myself. I'm so unhappy. I feel negative things about the world. Like I can't. I everything feels so random. I feel like I'm constantly at risk for something bad to happen. I can't relax in any moment because there's no purpose behind anything objectively. And it felt so dumb. It's like, oh, I'm so fucking smart. That's why I'm happy right now, right? Like, what does that matter? Like, that's what I place so much importance on. Well, I'm going to die. Right. Like I'll die if I don't like address these things, because I'm literally constantly am I gonna do it? When am I gonna do it? When would be the right time to do it? Should I not? Like, it's always an option. That's not good. And then like feeling empathy for my younger self of like, if I feel like I don't deserve that now and I'm thinking that all the time, like there's a younger person who actually tried to make it happen. Like what am I doing? Like, that's fucked up. Like, that's really sad. I don't want to do that. And so like the definition of hell, like in biblical terms, is like complete and total separation from God.
Yeah.
And in some ways, like you are God.
You're separated from yourself.
And I'm separated from myself. So guess fucking what? Like, I am in hell. But like, I'm currently reconnecting. So does that, like, can I take myself out? Can I call on the collectiveness that I was in earlier, and then like the power of myself and the fact that I'm a part of that to change it? And then like for the first time ever, I was like, what if everything was like gonna be fine? I never think about that. It's always about the way, like, I'm accidentally gonna get hurt. Somebody's gonna die. I'm gonna fail. Or I just will be so dissatisfied with all the positive things that like, it doesn't matter if I have positive things. It's literally about like inside of me, I'm dissatisfied. So like, what if I just like decided to be satisfied? And like, what if I got help for my mental illness, which I've been leaving untreated my entire adult life, and tackled my trauma and my resentment and the amount of anger that I have, and like actually take care of my brain. And then like having this like beautiful cosmic reverence of like, the brain is like a malleable organ. Like, it can heal itself. It changes. I can literally change my brain. And I'm privileged enough to be in a position where like, I have people who would support me in doing that. And like somebody connected to me who has resources who will ensure that I go and get some fucking help. So like it's like, if I don't like the way I feel right now, as long as I survive tonight, like I get to do something tomorrow. And then a bunch of other stuff happened. Being able to see what my body really looked like for the first time. I couldn't really see the weight loss that much. It's hard. You've looked a certain way your whole life, and if you look different, it's because you've been bigger. So I could never really see what I looked like. And then it was like, wow, like I can see the changes, and like the loose skin and like I'm still smushy, but I'm lean and all these different things of like, wow, like I'm just a fucking woman animal. And I like love that about myself. And then like hallucinating that I'm being aborted and like,
Jeez.
like this deep sense of rejection, but then also like hallucinating like God is watching me, God is holding me, I feel held, my life can be okay, I can be happy as long as I have myself and I'm connected to myself and my higher self and that big cosmos, like I will figure out a way to continue on. And then I tripped like all of Saturday. I didn't realize I was still tripping. I like came out of my room in like a very zealous way of like, okay, I'm never doing drugs again, but I'm so thankful for them.
Right. What time did you take it on Friday?
10 p.m.
Okay.
And then by 10 a.m., I could come out of my room. And then I almost flushed the acid down the toilet.
Oh, you still had some?
Wrong. Huh?
You still had some acid? Like you still had a couple tabs?
I bought a ton.
Oh, really? Like what's a ton? Like a sheet?
Not a ton.
Or like
no, it really wasn't.
Strip?
It was more than I had ever bought. It was like 10.
Yeah. Nice strip.
And because I was going to play around with it.
Yeah.
I was going to do it all fucking summer.
Yeah, you didn't
I'm going to microdose. I'm going to have a
this.
little trip. I'm going to have a big trip. I'm
Yeah.
going to have a fat trip. Like, no, I'm going to have one big life-changing trip. And then I'm like going to put that shit away.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost flushed it. But I knew that Josh would like never talk to me again if I flushed that
At
acid.
least give it to me.
I know.
Oh my God, yeah.
No, at least give me it.
I gave it to somebody else. But then I paid him back for it too.
So how long ago was all this?
Like a year and a half ago.
Okay, so fairly recent.
Oh yeah.
And you haven't tripped since?
That would be really unwise. I have to tell y'all, like, best thing that ever happened to me? Yes. Like, I do not, like, that is a fact. So as soon as I came out of it, it was like, I'm going back to therapy. I'm changing my concentration. Like, I look at everything differently. Things roll off my back like they never have ever.
Yeah.
In a way that I've never thought of before. Like when someone is being like problematic or annoying me, like I'll still get annoyed, but the underlying energy inside of me is like, that's so funny that you handle this world we live in the way that you do. I can't believe I get to watch you and I share this place with you. Like,
I've
you know
seen
what I
that
mean?
Yeah, I've seen that in you. Yeah.
Like, and just appreciating that. Like, I get to see other, like, connection. I have, like, isolation-based trauma, which is when all my depression started, like, not seeing another kid my age for, like, 7 months or really leaving the house that often for, like, 7 months. It's, like, a long time for, like, a 9-year-old to have no interaction, being homeschooled at that time as well. So, and my dad working really hard. It was during the recession. And so it was just me and my mom and my brother, like, in the house for, like, 7 months, really not seeing anyone. So I really feel for, like, quarantine babies. Like, it's really bad for development.
Yep.
It was necessary for infectious disease. It takes a toll on you mentally.
Yeah. I mean, you see, like, Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, like when he was a baby, had like some kind of serious illness where he was like brought to like a children's like hospital type deal and was in isolation for months.
So
Not
bad
got
for
touch, no touch, no like real interaction or connection, and he ended up becoming the Unabomber, you know, like there's a lot of other, he was also like, I think like an MK Ultra study participant, but like that just like goes to show
it's
how
really
much.
bad for you.
I think he was an unwilling participant from
I think
from
so
the tape
too.
of that story.
Yeah.
He was kind of like tricked that this is like, oh, you're going to do this.
A Harvard study,
Yeah, and then they like really beat into him. And he was a young kid. He was smart. He was what, 17, I think?
Yeah,
or something,
like
when he went to
freshman
to
year, I
Harvard.
think.
Yeah. And yeah, that'd fuck anybody up.
Yeah. And so like from that point and then like even around people, like feeling isolated, just feeling like I can't connect, but I know that I have the ability, just feeling like I'm never quite getting there. And so I was like, why am I choosing to do something where like I'm by myself with like corpses that never chose to be in a lab. Like, why am I going to be alone in a lab with people who are stolen? And like, it's just like that's fucking depressing and not my personality. Why am I choosing to do that?
Right.
I want to go be with people. I want to go watch them. I want to talk to them. I want to hear what they have to say. That's what I should be doing. And I have the ability to do it very easily. Like tangibly, like I can switch very easily, seamlessly. I have enough knowledge to switch over to that field. Like, and so I was just like ready to do the things that I didn't feel ready to do before, that I had this just like mental block of making decisions. And you know, when you come out of that acid trip, it's like, there is no block. Right. It's like, I will do that thing.
Yep.
Everything is actually that simple. I don't have to think that hard about it. Anything I'm considering is not as important as what I know is the right thing to do. So I'm just going to do it. But I became very emotionally unstable for several weeks after. Several months, really.
Yeah, I mean, you just got like your ego died and you're putting pieces back together in yourself. That'll really
intense nightmares for several months. Like a lot of like trauma type nightmares. And then even still, like recently, I have like, I guess like LSD drug dreams where like I'm like very much like in a tripping experience in the dream. It feels really realistic. And that it's an accident. Like I wasn't prepared. Like I'm driving and I'm tripping to the point where like I can't really see anything, which is what was going on. Like there's only abstract images. There is no anything else in the room.
So this is after.
This is
after the fact.
The after effect, and it was very difficult for me to cope with. I was kind of paranoid for a little bit. Sure. My thinking became very strange, but I had enough awareness that like I knew that it was strange, and so I could just sort of like be like, okay, like we're just like, if it was going to be an emergency that changed my mental health forever, then I would know. But it's not. So like it's gonna die down and I'm gonna cope with it. So that was my biggest fear coming out of it, was that like I would not ever be the same.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, in a lot of ways you want it, you know, but
correct. In a way of like, I have to go live in a hospital now.
Right. Yeah. And that's a lot of people's fear, like in the midst of a bad trip, is like that this will never go away. Yeah. But just to back up, so you tripped through Saturday.
I tripped through Saturday. Saturday was really hard for me. I was tripping until I fell asleep at like midnight. Mm-hmm. So I was tripping from like
roughly 38 hours.
Yeah.
And then Sunday morning.
And then Sunday morning, it's Easter, and I rose again, bitch. I felt so fucking refreshed. I felt so refreshed and so different. First of all, your skin looks really good after tripping.
Get that afterglow.
It's so sexy. My body felt really healthy. I woke up again at like 4 a.m. and cried really, 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 really hard. And that was very cleansing. And then I went back to sleep and I got some good rest. And I woke up just in an absolute daze. I was like, I fucking traveled, bitch. Like that was like a fucking adventure.
That's a long trip off of 2 hits.
Mm-hmm. No, I was like, what the fuck? I was like so surprised. Everyone was really surprised. And then I went and I was able to eat for the first time. I couldn't eat all day the day before. There was this really huge component in the trip about like, because I was feeling this feeling of like, I'm going to kill myself. There's nothing that I enjoy. There's nothing that I like. There's nothing I can look forward to. I don't want any water. I don't want any food. I don't want anything. But like the only thing that I could think of like to look forward to. And then this started my whole like, what if everything was going to be okay? That transitioned into me having a lot of hope was like, I could fucking go for a cup of coffee though. Like I could really go for a cup of coffee. And then like, I had a barista job and it was like so horrible. People being so rude. And I had like really negative views of those people. And in that moment, like I felt so much compassion for everyone that I'd ever like been face to face with. And like, even if it's kind of like fuck you, but it's like, here's something that you need. Like, I'm giving you this cup of coffee. It's healing for people. And so on Easter, being able to have a coffee, to eat again, to go be with my family on a spiritually significant day that like I don't identify as a Christian anymore, but I had intense periods of like being a Christian and that being really important to me. And so I still appreciate like the story and like the metaphor of Easter. And so the way that the weekend sort of was laid out, it was like very profound for me.
Seems like
and for my dad
divine.
as well. Talking to my dad about it, he was like, "That's so fucking like."
That's what I
sick."
wanted to
And I
ask
was
you
like,
about,
yeah.
because I have a recollection of, like the whole thing seems very kind of divine intervention-esque in a lot of ways. But psychedelics are cool like that, and a lot of people like don't like ever. People trip balls like so many times throughout their life and never get that experience. But like, I don't know, it's kind of like fortunate, or like it's just a setting thing. But like when you were saying like it was the best thing that's ever happened to me, but also like probably not gonna drop acid again, like I don't know,
for the foreseeable
even
future.
Terrence McKenna, like the mushroom like guru, like had a trip, I think it was in Hawaii, that was his last trip, and like whatever occurred, you know, like long stories, but like that was what he needed and took it and was able to like take that and like not need more. But I have a recollection of you like Sunday morning. I didn't know you then, but you telling me about Sunday morning feeling kind of like very unstable and on shaky ground.
So that was on Saturday.
When your
I was still tripping.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
So I had not slept.
Phone ringage.
Phone ringing.
The phone should be transferred. It's fine. You can talk through it. You'll be louder than it.
I always am. Failed actress. We love that.
Because I think it's cool, like that. I don't know. Well, tell it. And
okay, yeah. So Saturday, once I had come out of the peak, but I was still tripping, and I didn't realize I was still tripping, and that's why I was really afraid that I was gonna be crazy forever, because I was like, oh, I can talk, I can go move around now, but I do not feel grounded in reality. And then by midday, like Vince was like, Tess, like you're still on drugs, okay? Like it's normal, like it happens. Yeah. It's not always 12 hours. Sometimes it's longer, you know? So I came out and I was like really unstable. I was going back and forth of like, let me tell you the good news, and like, am I in hell? Like, I'm seriously not convinced that I'm not there. Because like, what if this is one of Satan's tricks, that everything's getting better now, but really I'm just going to be perpetually pulled back into like this intense darkness, and it's only so dark because you think you're getting up to the surface a little bit, you know? So that, and then like texting everybody, like I texted like 10 people, like, drugs saved my life and I will never do them again. You are my brother. I love you. Like, just like, I felt like a fucking crazed, like religious person. And my friend, who did the acid with me, who fucking fell asleep. She fell asleep on the couch.
On Friday night?
On Friday night. But you know what? I think that acid is like, I'm going to give the person what it needs. Yeah. And
that acid had a
she
mind
is
of
like
its
a
own.
very hardworking waitress, like several doubles a week. And she was going through a really intense period right before her and her boyfriend broke up. That was like very difficult for them. And she wasn't really sleeping. She needed to sleep.
Right.
And that's what she was finally able to get. Like, she slept for like 6 hours.
It's just crazy. Whoever like made that LSD like has some kind of like alchemist powers.
Dude, I'm telling you.
I heard
those
it being referred to as the quarantine cure.
Have you ever done DMT?
No.
Because as you're talking about this,
I probably should not.
I'm thinking DMT. She's talking about the cosmos and all this. Like that experience sounds so much closer to like a DMT trip than any acid trip I've ever had.
I was seeing like some gods and shit too. Like, you know,
That's
right?
what I'm saying,
it
dude.
was
Like,
weird.
But the difference being like with DMT, it's so quick
It's
that in
very
your
fast.
back that like there's hardly an ability to even connect, like have the like think through those things. Like you're here and then your ego's like gone, my bad.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, DMT is so weird like that. But yeah, like going through the cosmos.
Yeah, I've had
and,
so many people. I've talked to so many people that have done DMT or people that I've done it with that have come out of it. Like I had a friend who did it for his first time. I did it with him, and he came out and all he kept saying was, "Man, that was God. That was God.
Yeah.
that was all God."
Yeah.
It's
I
hard
was-
to be like if you're an atheist like and you do DMT, it's really hard to maintain that belief. Like you may be agnostic, but like to experience what you experience, it's
Yeah.
very hard to like still say like, yeah, there's nothing else out there like that.
Yeah.
has-
And I was like
DMT
in
is
my
a
atheist
monster of its own.
agnostic moment, but
Yeah.
obviously not
Yeah.
now. I don't feel that way. I'm not religious, but I feel spiritual. It's very obnoxious when people say that, but I agree with them.
Yeah.
So feeling very unstable, going back and forth between like, oh my God, everything's going to be fucking perfect now. Not perfect, but like I have a chance to like, I've ruined my life. Like my life is ruined. I told Vince and I asked my dad to, once he got there, like, please drive me to the hospital. Like, please check me into a psychiatric facility. I am afraid for my safety. I needed therapy fucking yesterday, as in like before.
Yeah.
Like I've
Yeah.
known that I needed to go back into therapy and I just hadn't. That was another thing. Like those couple months, like when I also knew I needed to change my focus, I also knew that I needed to get back into therapy. I was spiraling a little bit mentally again. But I just couldn't fucking pick up the goddamn phone and like make it happen. So it really felt like an emergency to me. And I was like really afraid for like my sanity. But I had called my dad. My dad is the best person in the world.
Your dad sounds pretty dope. What's his name?
Curtis
Jean.
Kurt.
Curtis
Yeah.
Lowe.
I love
Curtis.
Kurt Moody. He's in town now.
Curtis seems like a pretty cool dude.
He's the fucking coolest. In doing this research too, I've become like more and more aware of like how important my dad was to me. I think for a lot of people, like having at least one person could make so much of a difference of like the choices that you make or the places that you end up. Having somebody who's like focused on ensuring that you're okay in a
Absolutely.
variety of ways.
It's considered to be like the number one protective factor against mental health issues and substance use.
If I didn't have my dad, I don't think I would be alive, especially because like at like less than a year after I had tried to kill myself in high school, like my mom kicked me out of the house. I was still a minor. So like if my dad, like a lot of different parents, like didn't give a fuck about me or was super detached, he was like a traveling business dad. And he was still like, you have a place to stay. You can live with me permanently, like making sure that I was going to have a place to be. And very relaxed, very objective.
Right.
He's a very philosophical person as well. So him and I have always had very deep conversations with each other.
And I imagine he had psychedelic experiences in his days.
Infinite.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially like traveling, doing music stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So you called him.
So I called him and I didn't say anything. I was just like, Dad, I need you to come here like right now. And he was like, is everything okay? And I was like, I don't really know. Like, and I'm crying. And I'm like, if you could just get here, I would appreciate that. Didn't have to fucking say anything else. Didn't have to explain. He was like, I will be there in 20 minutes. He's walking up the stairs. I'm sitting on the patio. He looks at my face. He goes, oh my God, you are fucking tripping balls right now. And I was like, yes. And I was so anxious too. I was like, oh, like I'm in crisis because I did drugs, that I was like not ready for it to be as intense as it was. And now like all of my guts have like spilled into reality and I have to clean it up and I need help cleaning it up. And like, it's hard to tell your parents, like, I did drugs. Will you help me clean up this drug mess? Like, but my dad, like, he thought it was funny. He was like, let's do this. He was like, I'm fucking like, let's dig in. I'm ready to hear about it. And he was really cool, really helpful. Talked me through it, talked me out of going to the hospital. He was like, fucking wait 3 days, bro. Like, you're going to feel fine. Like, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
You just have to wait it out. And he was like, and you're probably still tripping. Like, and I was. He was like, look at your fucking pupils. Like, you're not good yet.
Yeah.
Like, and I was like, okay. And then he spent a couple hours talking with me, making me feel better and letting me explain the experience and appreciating it with me. And I was like so terrified and anxious. He was like, we should go on a drive. And I was like, abso-fucking-lutely not. Like, I don't want to leave my house. I don't want to see other people. I feel really scared. And he was like, so that's why we're doing it. So like, we need to ease you back in to other environments. And we took a very slow drive around the beach with the windows down. He get some breeze in your face, look at the people, listen to the sounds. Like, we're just hanging out. Me, you, and your man, like, we're just hanging out. And it helped a lot.
Your dad's a pro.
Yeah.
Dude.
Oh,
He's
for
a
sure.
pro.
No.
That's my saying. My saying is change your environment.
Yeah, no,
Like-
yeah. As
like-
soon as things get funky.
When
Yeah.
Judy first started doing mushrooms with me, and she would get into those little like, no, I don't want to do anything or go anywhere. Am I okay? Am I okay? It's like, yeah, let's go outside. Let's come on, get up. No, I don't want to. Get up. We're changing your environment. Let's go. You're getting too far into your head. Come on.
We were talking about that on Monday, I think, like that, like everybody has their comfortability, but like it makes, like when you were explaining, one, the trip, but two, like your preference of staying in, like, I can understand like wanting to be in a controlled environment, but like I grew up like taking psychedelics at like shows and stuff elsewhere, but mostly shows. That makes me anxious, like feeling like I like am in one place and that's where it's gonna be. I would do like I was telling you Monday, like if things started feeling a little like uneasy, I would not only like go somewhere else, but I would like change my shirt. Like I would just like change up stuff, for one, because
That was
like
my MO.
with
Yeah.
LSD,
just like taking off my clothes or putting on different clothes. Or
well, yeah, right. I would with LSD, like for me at least, like if I'm whatever color, like if I was wearing this shirt, everything that I see, because I'm still seeing like the color of my shirt, my periphery has like would have a purple hue to it.
That's so funny.
Yeah, and so like if things like start, LSD makes wires cross like in your brain, like physiologically, like you become synesthetic in a way, like sounds and sights and colors and feelings, you know. So if a
And you
feeling
experienced that
became
anyway, so I'm sure it's just like seriously amplified.
right? Well, with sounds and feelings and audio, visual, but yes, but yeah, for sure, and it would be. And I would know, like, all right, this color is not doing well right now. Let's change the shirt, and it would fix things. Like, it would just change something up rapidly. Yeah.
See, I only ever get that anxious, jittery, I need to change my environment feeling if I'm inside. Like, we used to get like a hotel room, and you know, a nice, decent hotel room with nice vibe in it. And but after a while, I'd be like, I need to get out of this damn room.
Yeah.
You know, I need to go somewhere. I need to do something. I love doing it in public. You know, like I'll get like a day
I've heard
pass.
that from most people. Like I know that I'm a little funky
Well,
and
it'd be
being
pick
like,
a
I'm
nice
staying in
place
my
like
room.
the beach or like the
Yes.
beach at night.
Yeah.
Or like what I like
That
to do
sounds
is I'll find a
sexy.
hotel and I'll get a day pass to a hotel and I'll go chill by their pool. That's my favorite because I'll have a
Right.
DJ playing music and
That's very luxurious of you.
and well, I mean, there's a good vibe. You know, there are people that are having drinks. They got a DJ playing music. Everybody's laughing and having a good time. I like that vibe, and I get into it. And when I'm in public, if I start to like say I'm sitting in my little chair by the pool, and I'll start going off in my head, it's easy for me to change my focus onto something else. Or I'll
Yeah.
get up, let me jump in the pool real quick, wash, whatever, throw some water on my face, wet my hair. You know, it's easy for me to change my. What? You don't
Sorry,
like to wet
wetting
your
your
hair?
hair. No, I took a shower once when I was tripping, and it was like so horrible.
Oh, weird.
It,
I like it.
But also, like, my hair is really heavy.
Yeah,
So I felt
could
like
feel it, yeah.
stuck
No, I've
in
used
it,
to have
and it felt
thick,
like it was
long
going to
hair.
like
Yeah.
decapitate me.
Yeah,
But I was
could see
okay.
that. I could.
That
see
went away very
but
quick. I really,
it's
I
not
never
that
thought about like,
uncommon.
changing my environment because
Right.
like I'd never really had a bad time tripping or even like a bad moment.
Yeah.
There were little things like, do you guys know like the like jazz fusion group Weather Report?
Absolutely not. I'm sorry.
I really thought
you were
gonna
Jocko?
say I absolutely do. No.
Jocko on the bass?
No.
Wow. Anyways, there was a Weather Report song on, and it made me really anxious. I felt like it was teasing me and like looking at me. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I get that.
That type of stuff, but then it's like you change the music.
Yes.
Change
absolutely.
the music. Go
Yep.
into a different room. Make the lights different. So it's like I felt like I could change enough things in my apartment that I wouldn't have to literally be like, I'm leaving my apartment. Anyways, but yeah, that was helpful from my dad. It was very sweet. His whole thing about drugs and the attitude I was raised with about drugs is that like you have to be careful with them and they are for adults.
Use the buddy system.
They're for adults. So
Yeah.
I felt very critical and I was probably like a judgmental bitch in high school about like high schoolers doing drugs because I thought it was stupid.
Right.
It's like, just wait. Like you're doing shitty in school. We're all depressed and like having a hard time anyways. Like you want to make it harder by like being hung over when you're 15. That seemed so dumb to me.
Yeah.
Like obviously
I did pretty well in school after like I got my ADHD figured out, and I did drugs. So I mean, you never know. But as a generality,
as a
maybe.
general rule, and then like that's the attitude I grew up with.
But I
So the way
also
that
wasn't,
people
like,
feel very firmly like
habitual drug user.
drugs
at
are
that time.
bad. I
Yeah.
was like,
Okay.
they're not. they're bad for children whose brains aren't fully developed. Like maybe wait till like your brain is. The majority of it is developed.
No, definitely.
Right, so-
there's a lot of physiological like reasons for that. Yeah.
So
of
in my
course.
mind, I was always like, it never felt like drugs are off limits and I can never do them, but I want to, so I might as well do it now. It was just like, okay, like I have X amount of years
Right.
till like I get to start experimenting.
And that's
that will be
very good-
more fun time to do it anyways because I
Right.
didn't like my living situation growing up. It wouldn't have been a comfortable space for me.
Yeah, I can see that. But that's a good approach, like as a parenting
so,
thing.
too.
And I think like that's part of the problem. And just like a quick plug, like with Safety First, the drug education program we do with RAD, like that's discussed. Like there's a whole like lesson session that discusses why. Like
Yeah.
and gives it at a very like understandable terms, like why it's gonna be different and the outcomes are likely to be different if you do drugs when your brain is still forming. We didn't get. I mean, at least for myself, going through DARE, like that's not there. It's don't do drugs
Yeah.
at 5, don't do drugs at 15, and don't do drugs ever. You know, and
Yeah.
that's. I don't think like that was a good approach of.
Well, it just doesn't make any sense. And
Yeah.
like my dad, like he's done many drugs over certain amount of periods of times. And my dad has never had like an addiction type problem, but he knows many people who did. So he knew that it's like some people are more likely to experience addiction than others. Some people can do drugs and not have it be habit forming. Some drugs are more habit forming than others. You have to know yourself. You have to be careful. You have to pay attention
and understand your situation.
What you can,
that's a lot.
Yeah. And so that is something I always knew. I knew that people could do drugs without becoming a like really unbalanced by their use or in a really bad situation. So I knew that that was possible. I just knew that that was not the case for everyone. And it was most likely not like that people were probably more likely to have a problematic issue with substance use if they were just at a very basic level, like immature, like they're just not paying attention to anything in general, let alone like something that they're doing for fun.
Yeah.
Kids are high risk individuals. They enjoy high risk behaviors, and it's higher risk because they're not thinking about it as high risk either. They're not taking that into consideration when they do things, which is why like safety first is so great. It's like, hey, this is perhaps a high risk situation. You may do it. Here's what to do if it actually becomes a risk.
Yep. And that's a interesting evolutionary thing too. Like I've heard it posed by like evolutionary biologists that the reason for that is like it's an evolutionary advantage that you're a little more, seems counterintuitive, like if you're more likely to like do some stupid stuff that's gonna kill you, like that wouldn't be ideal, but you're more likely to take risks as a younger
innovation
and innovation and reproduction. I mean, if you're like you're a lot more likely to just sow your seed and reproduce, and earlier on in human evolution, like we didn't live that long anyways. So like, you know, get your nut, basically.
Get your nut.
Yeah, it's the
really
theory.
like the brain takes so long to develop. Like the humans are really unique with how long our development period is. With most animals, it's probably like a year or 2 or 3. We're like dependent, at least at the very basic level, literally, like not talking socially, but like as far as like being sexually mature and probably having enough whereabouts to innovate and find things for yourself, like 12.
Right.
You know what? In 12 years, that's a long time.
Yeah.
And even now we know that like, no, people need to be cared for. Gestation is very long. Like, and
But
it's all to develop this big noodle here. And then this noodle, it takes fucking 25 fucking years for your brain to develop, but it's so powerful. Look at everything like we've done as a species. It's pretty ridiculous. It's not necessarily positive, it just is, or negative. I mean, we haven't used it wisely always.
Yeah.
But yeah, my dad is awesome. I appreciate him. He was really helpful. And so I went back to therapy. Are we going too long?
We're good.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Go on. So you went back to therapy?
Yes. And that was a struggle for me. So I went back like knowing like, oh, like I need to process this experience that I had. And I only ever engaged in drug use for probably like 2 years of my life. It's just not a long period of time.
Right.
It wasn't a lot of different drugs. I really just liked like the intellectual stuff related to like marijuana and shrooms and acid. Like that's all I really wanted from drugs anyways, was to be like, I want to think in a different way than I usually do.
That was my
we'll do that
initial.
for you.
Yeah, that was my initial. Like, I just had like an infatuation with like the beatniks and the hippies. Like, like as a kid, and
Me too.
Kind of, you know, like that was the way I was and kind of am, and like it was like a mind expanding intention. Obviously, like the situations that I found myself in, both through no fault of my own and some through faults of my own, or just like
That's
less than wise decisions, you know, changed the trajectory of my drug use in a lot of ways. when you say like the way like kids, I don't know, it's just, I think we've talked about it a little bit before, but I do feel like young people and kind of a lot of people in general do use drugs for different reasons now. Like I said, like I used drugs like as a way to think differently, at least initially. Later it did become like numbing myself. But even so, like I didn't seek out oblivion from heroin or opiates in general. My idea of using drugs was to enhance, not to cut out completely. And it's almost as if for a lot of people and who knows if it's just what's available in terms of like opiates, like fentanyl, at least in Florida, like that's what you're going to get, but that's sedation, and like that. And I have talked to people, younger people, like early 20s, that like that's what they're looking for. And it's not like people who aren't around that kind of drug use maybe have the idea that like fentanyl is certain death, like that there's very much that. Like I heard somebody on a podcast this morning talking about like, you take a quarter of this pill and you're dead before you hit the ground, which is like also just the way, things work through, like if you're eating, that doesn't work like that anyways, like oral, whatever. Yeah. But like fentanyl isn't certain death, certainly. There's high risk to it. But I mean, getting high on fentanyl is definitely more so like anesthesia. It's cutting yourself off to the world for a little while, and a lot of people are looking for that now, which is, I think, like a very symptomatic thing of our society in general.
Oh, I would agree. Yeah. And it also depends on like the environment that you're from, like, and that I'm from, like the difference between like where we were growing up. Like you grew up like in California, like, I don't know, like the attitudes around drugs and like
a lot of Georgia too.
That's true, though.
A lot of Georgia.
But like, I don't know, like Appalachia, like motherfuckers is doing drugs because there ain't a goddamn other thing to do, really.
Right.
Except to go on a hike and do some drugs on the hike, And I didn't do either of those things. I was not very fun. I think I'm fun. I don't know. It was hard for me. Like, people liked me, but I wasn't close with anyone. Like, I didn't have like a friend group, but I was prom queen. Like, you know what I like?
Yeah.
It was weird.
You would be prom queen, dude. Mm-hmm. I said you would be prom queen.
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, what was I talking? Oh, I went back to therapy. And so I had only done drugs for like 2 years, and then I wasn't doing them like once I had stopped smoking weed, like I wasn't like doing drugs on a regular basis, but I'd been in and out of therapy and had mental health problems my whole life. So I'd been to therapy before, and there was this ginormous contrast that I experienced of like seeking mental health assistance, not doing any drugs, and seeking mental health assistance and mentioning that I had used drugs. I was treated really different. Like I'd never been treated like that before, like in a therapist's office. They seemed to really misunderstand me. I was telling her that I had this long history of like mental health problems, and that a lot of things came up that I wanted to talk about after having this very intense drug experience, that like I had these things I needed to work out that was brought up by this experience that I had. And it immediately became like, well, really what we need to figure out is why you would do drugs at all. And how we can ensure and make a plan for you to not do drugs in the future. And you actually, what you probably need to do is make friends and all this. And I was I was like, what? And it was like she couldn't hear anything else I had ever said, and then she wouldn't let me talk about it. She was like I think that the idea is like you encourage a behavior by providing any type of attention to it. So I was not allowed to talk about the acid trip. I was not allowed to describe the acid trip. Every time I brought it up, like her face would just like change. She would interrupt me. She would detract me. I was like, oh my God, this is so fucking frustrating. I like can't get help right now. Like this person will not fucking talk to me. And then the only person I could find after who I could literally look up and would be like, is willing to let me talk about my acid trip in with no negative connotation whatsoever, like just talk about it. It was like not a real psychologist, you know? So it was so difficult for me to find like these resources that I need and have space to just be a mental health patient, as I like have always been. And I thought, oh my God, like everybody I know who has like experienced like a substance abuse problem, like the root problem is like my problem. Like they have like depression that's like going untreated, or like trauma. Like the people I know specifically have like mental health problems that are going out of hand, and they're self-medicating in a variety of ways.
Yeah. It's crazy to me.
But they get different types of attention and resources from clinicians and their community. And that's when I was like, this is what I need to ask serious questions about in an academic format. I want to talk to people who have been in and out of a variety of types of treatments. I think my original thing was like, I want to talk to people who have left Alcoholics Anonymous or have been in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous frequently, because that's what I've heard the most about. And I know that it's very strict rule-wise, like with the steps themselves, they're worded and constructed in a very specific way by a very specific person in a very specific time. And it's interesting that it's still used so frequently, and by default it makes sense because it's free. I think that's important for people to have free things. And I did some Al-Anon stuff in high school. Like I read a lot of Al-Anon, which looking back at it now created a completely like non-complex version of the person I was struggling with in my mind.
Right.
That did not create a lot of compassion in me that now I'm really thinking about harder. And like, how do those people who feel alienated by their therapist or by this specific community that's really accessible, especially if they can't access a therapist, what is available to them? How do they get in touch with other types of support, other types of resources? That's what I was really interested in, but I had no idea how I was going to get in touch with that population. And then Austin was tabling outside of the anthropology department that fall, and I met Austin, and then we got the paperwork ready, and here we are.
It was an overdose awareness day event at FAU, and giving out Narcan. Tess came up. She was very bubbly. Like that was the first like thing I saw you like. Well, I remember like when I was taking stuff back to the car, I saw you like walking away like with some friend. And I just like I was like, that's like an interesting chick. Like I don't know. You just like struck me as, for one, like a very theater drama type person. Like that was just like, you're just very expressive and
that's my real disease,
confident,
is having done
stuff
theater
like that. But no, like I remember I was told that we were going to have anthropology student shadowing us at some point at Flash, our syringe exchange, and kind of forgot about it. And then
we met very briefly, and then I never saw you again for like 8 months.
Well, so we met. You asked me about like Rebel, what we did, stuff like that. Think I gave you some Narcan, and then like I didn't see you again. And then at some point between that time, like I had heard that we were gonna have somebody coming, and then I remember one day I had a Narcan training in the morning. It was Friday morning, like at like right near our site, and then went and got there early. And then I saw this chick who's like got red hair that's like very,
you saw
like
Bobo the Clown at Encompass Community Center.
No, but like at the time, like your hair was pretty like big, and it was just like, I don't know, you have a big personality, like
I was letting my freak
vibrant
flag fly.
type of person.
Yeah.
And then she's like waving at me like she knows me. And I'm like, who is this chick?
I
'Cause
saw
was
him
here
looking
before
at me
the
in the car. I was
bus.
like, he does not remember me.
I was
Oh
very
my God.
confused. But then, like, when you got closer, I was like, oh, no, I remembered who you were. And then made the connection that, like, you were there to shadow us. And then I was like, that's her. And that's crazy that, I mean, we gave out a lot of Narcan that day, but it's kind of cool that, like, a 5-minute conversation was, you know, like, enough to, like, give you some direction in what you wanted to do. Or partially, I mean,
Dude,
plus a
that was a
36-hour
fucking
acid
godsend.
trip.
I was like, after this acid trip, I knew that I wanted to switch to cultural anthropology and do something like medical related, because I really was interested in how people heal and choose to heal and how they're not allowed to heal in certain ways, because it's a struggle of my life and many people that I care about, and I just didn't know exactly how I was going to do it. And then I just could not stop thinking about drugs. It was like
been there.
It was like this it was like this godly encounter. I was so in awe of what I experienced that, like, I could not stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
I think about it every fucking day. It was like the craziest thing that ever happened to me. And so I was like, I have to study this. I want to study this. This is a difficult, like, population to access, though, especially, like, as a master's student. Like, I have no idea how I'm going to do this. And I don't want to do it online. Oh my God, I don't want to do an investigation of a Reddit group. Like, I really don't. I was so thankful that it happened the way that it did. And I was like, this is exactly like what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, like, grassroots. I'm looking for things that people don't like. Like, I know that people have a problem with syringe exchange. A lot of people don't. A lot of people, once you actually explain it to them, they're like, oh, duh.
Yeah, it's just they don't understand it. They think that you're helping them get high or whatever the case may be. They don't understand that it cuts back on
they don't
diseases.
need help getting high. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
They need help just staying safe. They're going to do it anyways. Like,
There's people who had problems 5 years ago with Narcan being distributed freely in the way that it was, which, you know, I'm sure there's some out there still, but, like, things change, things progress, but
They
like
do.
that's
There's still
insane.
people out there that have the, well, they deserve to die mentality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Until it's one of their family members or
Bro.
somebody closer to them.
There's an old dude who fishes where I fish. Like, I talk to him sometimes, and I wasn't there this day. My pops was out there this day, and, like, he was talking to him and some other people, and, like, I think, like, they had asked what I did for work. My dad was, like, explaining it, and this guy, like, that's basically what he said, like, is, you know, in my book, and he gave some, like, weird, like, BS kind of, like, story about, I don't know, his, like, daughter being in the hospital for something, and then, like, the doctor just, like, leaving her to go address an overdose or something like that. But he was basically saying, like, well, these people deserve to die, like, and this guy smokes cigars like people smoke cigarettes.
Yum.
Like Romeo y Julieta's. He's got a cigar, like, in his hand while he's saying that, and I asked my dad, I was like, yo, did so-and-so was he smoking a cigar? He's like, yeah. I was like, you know, you should have been like, well, do you deserve treatment if you get lung cancer or, like, heart disease? You know, it's like the same thing. If you want to relate it to that, you're making a choice that obviously has potential consequences. But, like, things change.
I'm making a choice that has potential consequences when I get behind the wheel of my fucking car.
Absolutely. So you
Like,
put a seatbelt on.
You
Yeah.
can't avoid risk.
Right. But, like, and obviously things are becoming more accepted in large part, but also, like, it's weird how things change around drugs and how much of an effect drug policy has on it and the war on drugs. Like, just the whole therapy thing, like, just trying to find a therapist who would allow you to talk about a real, like, life-changing experience in the context of it being related to drugs, without, like, just wanting to talk about, like, well, you did drugs, that's bad, why did you do drugs? But, like, the
And it put
actual
my life in
thing-
danger. Listen, like after that, like I was doing my best to get help and I wasn't getting real help.
Right.
And that's a lot to be brought up to the surface and have like no tools to cope with.
Mm-hmm.
Like none whatsoever. And even though like I had much more hope and I looked at things differently, I'm still a person with like severe chronic depression. And so when I would hit those depressive moments, it was so much worse than it had ever been before, because if the idea of like I want to kill myself came up after this experience I had where I had like decided that I wasn't going to do it, then it felt really like
the weight
I
of it
can't
and the
describe.
gravity
It's
of
like
that
such
thought
a
was
hole
more,
to be in.
Yeah.
And then I wasn't diagnosed with ADHD yet, so I didn't know that was part of the problems that I had in like not being able to manage my life, which triggered the depression and the anxiety, like and make it all worse. And then I was in my first full in-person year of graduate school, which is different. It's a different type of workload and like people needing you. And I had a very tough professor. He was like a new professor and a visiting professor. So he needed to have this real strictness about him to sort of establish himself as serious. And my life was, it was just, I felt like everything was like falling apart. I couldn't keep up with any of my work. I was like really emotionally erratic. My sleeping was not normal. Like I couldn't get my sleep normal. And he like pulled me aside after seminar one night to have this like 2-hour long conversation in his office where he essentially told me like, and I was still like the best student in his class. I'm one of the best students in my department. Like I'm an excellent student. Like even if I turn things in late, I just communicate about it. If I can't be somewhere, I communicate about it. I care a lot about my school.
Yeah.
Like it's the most important thing to me, really. And he told me I was going to fail. That he thought I was going to fail, even though I was making an A in his class. He was like, I just don't think you're going to graduate from this program.
It's a weird thing.
I don't think I'll be seeing you next year. You spend too much time with your friends. Your mental health is a mess. You can't keep it together. Like,
The hell?
yeah, it was kind of abusive.
It's more than kind of.
And really just sort of tore me down and literally said like verbatim, you need to get your shit together or like this is not going to happen for you. And I had just like no self-esteem in the conversation and just was like, you're completely right. And like I went home and just like sobbed and panicked all night. Like I didn't sleep at all. I got no sleep. I was like sobbing and panicking and freaking out and like screaming and like I couldn't pull it in. And I was like, it was becoming a very serious situation. And I called my friend Josh and I was like, hey, I need you to talk to me. And I also may need you to drive me somewhere. I was going to admit myself. But it ended up, and I was on the phone with my insurance. It ended up being like too expensive, like financially, and also like with the amount of time. Like I will have to redo the semester if I admit myself because they're going to keep me for 90 days and I don't get to choose. Right. And I was like, I can't swing that, so I have to figure out a way to cope with it. And my friend was really there for me. I really appreciated him. He was like, I'll do whatever you need. Like if you need me to drive you, I'll drive you. But let's figure out if you need to do that, because if you don't need to do that, we don't want you to do that. And I know that those aren't comfortable places to be. I lied when I attempted suicide in high school to avoid going to the hospital because I had several friends who had gone and were worse coming out of it. So I knew it's not like ideal. But that's when I got like actual help that has actually changed my life. I found a psychiatrist who spent like 2.5 hours doing my intake and talking to me and figuring out my situation and really taking time. And I felt really passionate about like taking my health into my own hands. Like I don't have like any of my medical records. Like, my parents are divorced and they're both disorganized. So I don't have that stuff. I don't know about that stuff. It was inconsistent while I was in treatment as a child. Like, I was just like, no, like, I'm doing this now. I'm doing it myself. I'm doing it right. I'm getting reassessed. I'm getting re-diagnosed. I'm starting from scratch and I'm keeping everything. Like, this is my shit. I'm a fucking adult. And she helped me so much, and she got me into my intensive outpatient DBT program that I've been in all year, and that has really helped me. I got my ADHD diagnosis. She listened to my fears about being put back on medication because I'd had bad experiences on and off of medication, and she really took her time in suggesting what was going to be right and listening to my concerns. And then I started the Adderall, and that has been changed my life.
When you need stimulant medication as a person with
ADHD,
you need it. Like, and it absolutely can be life changing. And it's like not even like you were saying, like, you're concentrate, like, people have the idea of ADHD being like this just attention, but like when that goes untreated, like that affects so many other areas. And like people like that find out they have diagnoses or get a diagnosis, like kind of it's very eye-opening in other areas.
It is.
But what I was thinking though about like that therapist is, and how like,
which one?
The one that refused to allow you to like talk about such a
what a fucking
life-changing
weirdo.
event. I think it's very strange too, but I also think, like, I mean, as somebody like in school for social work, that's also very much like the antithesis of what you're supposed to do. And I don't know what this person, like, sometimes psychologists for social workers, LCSWs, their approaches can be a little different, and psychologists can be a little more like, this is like the way that I see it, and this is how you're going to do it.
And I really dislike that.
I just think it's an interesting kind of illustration of the way drug policy changes, the way like when we've got decades of therapists and psychologists working with psychedelics, with LSD and MDMA. I mean, a little more with MDMA, but all of that gets shut down with sweeping drug acts and the war on drugs. And a few decades later, like, something that was used with good results, and like with MDMA, like being in like the final phase of trials and probably going to be starting to be used legally more broadly very soon. Like, that therapeutic tool is now, we're not even going to like discuss that in therapy. And that's all just so, like, going back to what you said at the very beginning of this episode, like the impact of the substance, I mean, like, versus the way, obviously,
the impact of our beliefs on our relationship to it.
And the people like that therapist refusing to work with you in that context, like, was obviously very impactful for you, and that in a negative way, for something that was impactful for you in a pretty positive way. And that just comes, like, brings it back to like that, how we look at things as a society with drugs, and how that affects the way drugs impact people and societies.
Yeah. And my therapist now, like, she's so amazing. Like, I didn't even know this is not a part of the description of what she says on her website, because it's not a part of the program. This is not DBT, you know?
Yeah.
But this person in this program that I happen to be referred to and get in on a waiting list that my psychiatrist referred me to, like, this therapist, as soon as I very tentatively mentioned to her, I was like, I am seeking intense help because I've always had these problems, and then I had this experience. And my therapist now was immediately like, I so love the science of LSD.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's so important. I'm very interested to hear about your experience. She allowed me to describe my entire experience in immense detail, was very engaged with me. I appreciate that she was interested in the sort of imagery I experienced and the thoughts that came up and the sort of hell metaphor, like she was very engaged and she could tell how important and impactful it was for me. And like, it's a part of my program.
Mm-hmm.
Like we incorporate it. It's something that is positive and helps me with my target behaviors.
Right.
And I didn't even know that was like gonna be a thing. So like, there's just so many things that have happened that are like it could have easily not happened.
Fall into place. It's life, man.
Like I met you randomly, and then like I had to not have the right therapist so that I could be really desperate and serious to meet the psychiatrist who got me in touch with the help I really needed and the diagnosis I really needed. Like I would have never talked to a psychiatrist.
Right. Right.
If I was not fucking desperate. And I think any mental health patient would say that. Like,
Probably
we're going to
so.
avoid a psychiatrist at all costs.
Probably so.
She's the nicest psychiatrist I've ever met in my life. Like, she cares about her patients. It's really unique.
It's refreshing.
It is.
So,
so that's that.
Yeah. So we're gonna probably wrap up. I appreciate all that. I mean, like I always appreciate, especially a psychedelic story. I know Eddie does too.
This was great. This was great.
Thank you for listening.
We went over a little. I think this is probably our longest one so far.
I think so too.
We broke 2 hours.
I talk a lot.
Well,
I hope that's okay.
I prefer the long form conversation.
I do too.
I think it's hard to do this, like these because like the whole purpose is having conversations that aren't normally had about like these kinds of things, and I think like it's difficult to meet the purpose without doing it in long form.
You had a lot of information to share as well.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you. I really appreciate the space to share, and like everyone at Rebel and Flash has shared so much with me over the last 5 months, I guess.
Seems like more.
It feels like more, but it's really not.
Really?
Shockingly enough.
I thought it was like 9.
No.
Oh,
Isn't that weird?
Yeah. I mean, you're part of the team, man.
Yeah.
You know?
No. And you all have been very gracious and welcoming to me and have absorbed me into your community, which, by the way, like it does seem biased research wise, and it kind of is in certain ways, but like there are like theoretical perspectives, definitely in anthropology. And I don't know if this is true of others. Social science disciplines, probably sociology too, that are literally like part of the goal of the perspective of the academic work is to aid in like the goals of your subjects.
Yeah.
So providing platforms for them, collaborating with them. So,
becoming enmeshed. I mean, what's her face lived with freaking gorillas for a while. You know what I mean? She was a primatologist.
Exactly.
So we're not gorillas, but same difference.
Yeah. So this has been like my favorite thing of my whole life.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious.
I'll take
It's all been leading up to this. You know what I mean? So I appreciate you letting
Life's
me
a big acid
share.
trip, man.
Yeah, man.
Period.
Life's the most psychedelic thing there is.
Period.
We live in a matrix of acid.
Matrix of acid. Interesting. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Cool. Until next time.
Let's do it.
Signing
Outta here.
off.